Hi everyone, I'm back and I have a new setup. I'm my TBR shelf. Oh, I bumped it. My TBR shelf is over here. You can see my hand. That's Opal, by the way, my cute little dragon. I decided to set up in front of my desk because the lighting was kind of weird in the corner, so got a new setup today. Hopefully I won't kick the tripod again. But we'll see. You can probably hear the cars in the background because our apartment is right on the road, but you know, can't really do anything about that. But I'm back. I skipped May because I was not doing well. I was still really burnt out from grad school. I'm starting to feel better now. Like I'm functioning like 60% now rather than like 20, which is where I was at. But yeah, I was really burnt out, so I didn't do a video, but hopefully from here on out I'll start regularly doing videos, and I have a couple ideas for extra videos other than the wrap-ups that I've been doing. And I've been regularly posting on my social media, my Instagram, Bookstagram, so really liking that. I'm actually motivated to do things, and that is surprising and good, and I'm very happy about it. So yeah. But we're going to be doing a reading wrap up for the month of June. I'm recording this on the last day of June, so tomorrow is July 1st. I will probably post it on July 1st, I think. We'll see. But yeah, let's get into it. I have 2 books that are 3 stars. So first of all, I read 3 Dark Crowns by Kendar Blake. I liked the story. It was pretty good, actually. But I just it didn't grab my attention enough to like want to read the rest of the series because there are like 4 or 5 books in the series. And I was just like, nah, it's not really the vibe. Also, for something that's categorized as dark fantasy, it wasn't actually that dark. At least in my personal opinion, it wasn't that dark. So I was like kind of disappointed in that. Yeah, so I read that it didn't grab my attention very well, and the world building was kind of iffy. There was a lot of stuff that happened that made no sense, and like maybe it would be explained like later on, but I was just very confused. And so I read it, say that I read it, but 3 stars. It might be great for someone else. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to do a summary. It's set in a world where the queen gives birth to 3 daughters every generation, and those 3 daughters have different powers, and they have to fight to the death basically to find out who's going to be the new queen, which is a very interesting concept, and I thought it was fascinating, but it was just confusing and weird, and I couldn't get into it. But it might be interesting to someone else, I don't know. But yeah, so that was one of my 3-star books. I also read The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. Now, again, I really liked this book. It was actually a very good story. Basically, it is about Mary Jekyll, Dr. Jekyll's daughter. So if you love gothic, romantic literature, like if you're a fan of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Dracula, Frankenstein, Sherlock Holmes, this is a good book, and I like those kind of things. And it was very interesting and unique, and basically it follows her in this, she's trying to figure out what this Society des Alchimistes, I probably didn't say that right, she's trying to figure out what this is and like solve these murders at the same time, figure out what happened to her dad. How did he get murdered? It's very interesting, but I feel like, first of all, it did not have a lot of action. Like, it had a few scenes, but it was mostly just conversation. And while that's great in some books, it didn't really work for this one. It felt like it needed more action, so I didn't really like that. Also, the character building needed some work. But it was a good idea, and I liked it. The writing was really good, but yeah, needs more character development. But I gave 3.5 stars. I thought it was pretty good. I would recommend it, but I probably wouldn't read it again. On to 4-star books. I have 3 4-star books. So first of all, we have Most Ardently by Gabe Novoa. So I really love this. I like reading unique adaptations of books. So this one is Pride and Prejudice, but Elizabeth is actually Oliver Bennet, a transgender man named Oliver Bennet. And it walks through what it feels like to deal with feeling like you're in the wrong body, you were born in the wrong gender, and like, what does that feel like? What are the kind of, especially in a society where that is not acceptable at all in the slightest. And I really enjoyed it. It was very unique. And also, I think if you are trying to better understand what transgender people go through, it would be a really good book to read because it very vividly describes that experience. I have one problem with this. I only had one. Everything, character development, writing, everything was great. I have one problem. I don't like when books that are historical fiction are unrealistic. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. And it was not unrealistic for there to be a woman who feels like she shouldn't be a woman, that she should be a man. Like, gender dysphoria is a very normal, and same-sex attraction, which was also discussed in this, are very normal things that have happened throughout history. That was not the unrealistic part. The unrealistic part was specifically how Mrs. Bennet reacted to Oliver coming out. Because Mrs. Bennet throughout Pride and Prejudice is just like, you must conform to what I want you to be. Like, she's very controlling, and like, she's like, oh, my nerves, if you don't marry this man, like. And she just immediately, when Oliver comes out to her, she's like immediately like, oh, my son. And I'm like, that's not how she would actually react. Mrs. Bennet would not do that. Also, the fact that Mr. Bennet was actually able to change the way the title shifts, or the land shifts, the entail. He was able to change the entail so that Oliver can inherit his father's stuff. And I feel like that's unrealistic that would happen. Like, it could happen, probably. Like, Gabe went through and did a thing at the end, like, about how it could happen. But, like, personally, from my study of history, I think that it's unrealistic. But that's just my personal opinion. Both of those things are my personal opinion, though honestly, I really feel like Mrs. Bennet would not have reacted well. But I also understand wanting to write a story that has a happy ending. But personally, I would prefer a realistic ending to a happy ending. But that's just my personal preference. So, but otherwise, I loved it. Recommend it. I'll probably read it again at some point. I actually have started reading Pride and Prejudice. Like I've never read it. I've watched the movies. I've started reading it like multiple times and never finished it. So I'm like actually gonna finish it this time. So we'll talk about that next month, hopefully. But yeah, then this inspired me to actually read Pride and Prejudice finally. But yeah, definitely recommend Most Ardently. But the lighting changes. It's because it looks like there's a storm rolling in, which is great because it's been dry and I'm excited for rain. I love a good rainy day. But on to our next book. The other book that I read, and I literally read this yesterday. I read it like in an entire day because it was so good. Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. It's a novella. And it follows this little, she was a human stolen by the fairies, and a changeling was left in her place, and she gets magic from living with the fairies and nymphs, and ends up learning how to change into a toad. And we start out the story with her guarding this castle keep that's surrounded by this thorn hedge, and she's supposed to guard it. This little like fairy human person thing is supposed to guard it. And this knight comes and he's like, I really got to get in there. Like, I read the story, I really got to get in there and figure out what's going on. And it's just a great story. It's a short little story. It's only 111 pages, but I loved it. I devoured it. And I love how T. Kingfisher tells fairy tales, as it's just a nice little nugget of gold, and I love it. And I can't wait to read it again at some point. I just love T. Kingfisher. Is just, every single time I devour her books. I don't know why, but it just is perfect for me, especially when I'm struggling to read other books, which like a day ago I was like, I don't really want to read any other books, but I have this book, so I'm gonna read it because I love T. Kingfisher. And then I was like, yes, and now I'm in the mood to read again. That's just how it works. She heals my soul. But yeah, I gave that 4.5 stars just because I didn't feel quite good enough to be a 5-star read, but there was nothing like specifically wrong with it. So I recommend all of her books. One product of me getting out of the burnout that I've dealt with for my entire college career, is that I'm finally reading nonfiction again. And I'm hoping that reading one book of nonfiction this past month will get me into reading more. So I read The Age of Magical Overthinking by Amanda Fontell. I also have Cultish set aside that I'm going to read as well, because I loved her writing style, and like all the research that she does is very interesting, and like there's all sorts of little facts and stuff. So I am going to read Cultish at some point, which is her more popular book, but I did really like this as well. It is about cognitive biases in modern society, and it was just really fascinating because she goes into all the details about like psychological theories as to why we have these cognitive biases, and then like how they affected her personally, and like other people's stories, and like it's basically just a study into them and writing out her research. And I found it absolutely fascinating, especially since I love studying psychology and sociology, and if you like that sort of stuff, this is the kind of thing you like. And I have a feeling that Cultish will be very similar in that it's very sociology based, and I think I'm really gonna enjoy it. So hopefully I'll get that read before the end of next month, but we'll see. It's time for the 5-star reads. I have 3 5-star reads. Also, I read a total of 9 books, but anyways, so I finally finished the Heroes of Olympus series. It took me way too long because I have been reading it since the beginning of the year, and I finally finished it. Gave 5 stars to Blood of Olympus because it felt like the perfect wrap up to this series. But here's the thing. I don't feel like I want to read any other Percy Jackson books, because this feels like such a good ending. It's like, this is the way it's supposed to be. Like it tied up in a neat little bow, and I love that, and I don't want to ruin it. So I don't want to read any of the other books just because I don't want to ruin it. Maybe I'll read them at some point, but probably not anytime soon. I also just don't feel like getting back into that universe right now. I'd rather reread Harry Potter, which I'm actually planning on doing at some point in the near future. But yeah, I thought it was really good wrap up to the whole Percy Jackson saga. Second book, I read Murder Your Employer by Rupert Holmes. Okay, I did not know this, but this author is the guy who wrote the Pina Colada song. And literally on the back of his book, he is called a Renaissance man because he's done so many different things. And I admire him greatly. This is such a unique book. Okay, so I loved this book. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. Basically, it is a reverse murder mystery. And I'm just gonna leave it at that because I feel like not knowing anything going into it is going to be better, because it's kind of confusing at first, but then you realize what's happening, and then you're just like, oh, and it's so cool. It's so interesting, and I love it. But it was very unique writing style, very unique like structure, story structure. I've never read anything like it. But it follows 3 different characters throughout the whole thing, and it was very nice, and it was cozy in only the way a murder mystery can be. So definitely recommend it if you like murder mysteries, if you like true crime, anything like that. You will love this book. The last thing I read, and my favorite thing that I read this month, was The Shepherd King duology by Rachel Gillig. Listen, I have seen this all over Instagram and YouTube, and being like, either you love it or you hate it. Well, guess what? I loved it. And I was scared I was gonna hate it, which is why I waited way too long to read this book, because I was scared I was gonna hate it. But I loved it. Like, I read it was For the Wolf and For the Throne by, was it Hannah Witten? This is very similar. So if you like Hannah Witten and her story style, what she writes, you will like Rachel Gillig. Basically, it follows this girl who has a monster living inside of her head. In this world where having magic, other than through a very sanctioned way of having magic, is illegal. You're murdered for it, and anyone who knows about it, who protects you, gets murdered for it. So it's a very dangerous world, and it's very, very dark in the way that's like, yum, yum, yum. I want to eat it all up. So I loved it so much. I keep saying I devoured it because I'm hungry. But I devoured this duology, and I can't wait to read it again sometime because I loved it. Let's see. I wrote down notes. Let's see. It is a dark, twisted fantasy with monsters and mysterious magic. The way each book was set up was different. Each book is unique in the way it's written and the POVs and everything. So the first book, each chapter starts with poetry from their holy book. So, and also in the first book, the world building, the religion, all of that is it's given to you at the beginning. Like, there's still some things, but you like understand what's going on from the very beginning. And I love that because I don't like being confused the entire book. Also, yeah. And the first book, so each chapter starts with a bit of poetry from their holy book. And then it's also all one POV. It's first person POV with the main character. The second book, it does not have that. And it actually has 3 different POVs, but they're actually fairly easy to follow. Like, sometimes I find multiple POVs difficult to follow, but the way that Rachel Gillig writes them, it's very easy to keep up with and follow. And I loved it so much. And I highly recommend it. I love it so much. I would put this up on the level of Once Upon a Broken Heart, which is one of my favorite series of all time. So, yeah. That's all the books I read. I am very happy about my reading month. I wish I had read more, but I feel like it's okay. It's chill. It's whatever. But I am, first of all, I'm proud of myself for actually reading a nonfiction book. I have, what do I have? I have Unmasking Autism. That is my nonfiction book that I'm going to try to read this month. We'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll also read Cultish. I don't know. I'm being chill with myself when it comes to nonfiction because I've been so burnt out and I don't want to overdo it. But yeah, and the fiction book that I'm currently reading is Trust of the Emerald Sea. I'm loving it already. I'm only 50 pages in and I'm already loving it. The writing style is very unique. Brandon Sanderson is peak. Like, I love this man. He's so good. Other news, and I can't speak. In other news, I'm going on a book buying ban. My best friend's doing this with me. We are going on a book buying ban until we have read through our physical TBR, which I have 43 books on my physical TBR. So I feel like that's going to take me at least through the end of the year to finish. There are exceptions though, because I can't just not buy books, because that would be stupid. Like, why would I do that to myself? But I am doing exceptions. I have 3 exceptions. First of all, I can buy books that are new releases. So it's a book that I really want that's a new release. I can get that. So like C.G. Drews is coming out with a new book by the end of the year. So I'm gonna get that. And then who's the other one? Books by authors that I'm trying to collect all of their works. So like T. Kingfisher and V.E. Schwab, trying to collect as many of their books as possible. So when I see those and I want to get it, I can buy those. And then any series that I need to finish. So I need the next 2 books in the Realmbreaker trilogy. So I need to buy those at some point. But yeah, those are my exceptions. And yeah, we're gonna see how this goes. If I can have the self-control to not buy as many books as I want to. So yeah, I actually bought 2 books this weekend in anticipation of this, because I was like, I can't buy any more books, but I really want these, so I'm gonna get them. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. I'll keep you updated on how that's going. I'm also using Notion now to keep track of my reading, which at some point I'm gonna make a video all about my reading hub and how I'm doing that. And I also might talk about how I'm using Notion for my writing as well. I'm still working on that more though, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's all my updates. I am excited to be getting into a new era where I'm not in school and I feel like I have more time and energy to do things. So come along on this wild ride with me. But yeah, that's my life when it comes to reading. I don't know how to end this, but yeah, go read One Dark Window, please. You'll love it. That's how I'm gonna end this. Bye.